guys, it's Amanda from Amanda Reads, and today I wanted to do a video about books that I don't think you've probably heard of. So I guess you could call them underhyped books, but I just don't think there's any hype, so they're like hypeless. The first book is Deadline by Chris Crutcher. Deadline is about a boy named Ben Wolfe who in his senior year of high school finds out that he has cancer. He is basically given 1 year to live, and he decides that he doesn't want to be treated like he only has 1 year to live. So instead of going home and telling his parents and telling his family, he keeps it completely to himself and doesn't tell anyone. He sets some goals for himself to complete throughout his senior year. As the year goes on, he realizes that he actually is having a tough time coming to terms with what's going on. He's trying to seem like he's okay, but he's not. Next we have Searching for David's Heart by Sherry Bennett. Now this was actually turned into a movie. I don't know if it was a Disney movie or what, but the movie doesn't really go completely with the story, and I still love this book. I read this book when I was in 5th grade. It was part of our reading in the class, and it is still such a story that I will always cherish. The main character of the story is a girl named Darcy, and her brother, David, ends up passing away from a terrible accident. And Darcy has to figure out how to cope with her brother's passing, and her brother was an organ donor, and his heart gets donated, and she wants to find the boy who has his heart. So she runs away from home with her best friend, and the book is about her journey to find David's heart. And that's why it's called Searching for David's Heart. The next book is What Girls Learn by Karen Cook. This story centers on a young girl named Tilden who has a sister named Elizabeth and a mother named Frances. Frances falls in love and moves the family up north, I want to say. And Tilden and Elizabeth have to adapt to their new lives with their mother's boyfriend, who they're not really very fond of. And then Frances gets diagnosed with breast cancer and ends up passing away. Elizabeth and Tilden really grow up before they need to. Tilden especially is trying to hang on to her childhood and trying to find her place in the world. Elizabeth is very rebellious. She is younger, but once their mother passes away, she completely changes. And it's really Tilden's job to put everybody back together and figure out how to go on with life. There is one scene in this story that makes it maybe not 100% suitable for younger children. I did pick up this book when I was in middle school and put it down when it got to that part because I wasn't comfortable with the content. And then I ended up reading it a few years ago when I was more mentally mature and could handle it, and so that is when I read it. Next up is Lucky by Alice Sebold. This is the author who wrote The Lovely Bones, and this is her memoir. This is a very tough story to read, and if you are not comfortable with rape and PTSD from that, then I would not recommend this book. She went to Syracuse University, and she was raped one night outside, and it goes into very graphic detail. The rest of the book is about how she then moved forward with her life, and it shows how one thing, how just that one act that someone else did to her will forever impact the rest of her life. I do highly recommend this book if you think you can handle it. The next book is The One I Left Behind by Jennifer McMahon. I love Jennifer McMahon's books, and this one in particular was the first one I read by her. It's about a 13-year-old girl named Reggie. One summer, a killer who calls himself Neptune comes to their small town. He begins kidnapping women and killing them, and leaving one of their hands on the steps of the police department. One day, Reggie's mom's hand is found. Then you fast forward years later, and Reggie finds out that her mother is actually alive. She has to figure out who Neptune is because it's starting again, and she needs to stop him, and she needs to figure out what's going on with her mom and where she is. Next is I Know It's Over by C.K. Kelly Martin. This book is about a couple. They are teenagers named Nick and Sasha, and it is told from Nick's perspective. Nick falls in love with Sasha, which he never thought he would do, and he loves her so much and he thinks everything's great, and then Sasha tells him it's over. He has no idea why, he's completely confused. She just drops all contact and does not talk to him, and then a few weeks later shows up on his doorstep and says that she is pregnant with his baby. The story chronicles what they're going to do about that and how Nick feels about all this and how Sasha feels about it, and I love how it's the boy in this story who's still holding on to the relationship. Next I have If I Am Missing or Dead by Janine Ladis. This chronicles the life of Janine Ladis, the toxic relationships that she had throughout her young adult to adult life. The premise of the story, If I Am Missing or Dead, is based on her sister Amy, who was murdered by her husband. Janine has been in abusive relationships for almost her entire adult life and uses Amy's murder to strengthen her to leave her own abusive relationship. It really gives you the perspective of that back and forth of people who are stuck in abusive relationships where they want to leave but then they don't, and how manipulative the people that they are with can be towards them. And it was very eye-opening because that is not something I have had to experience in my life and hopefully never will have to experience. But because I haven't experienced it, I don't understand it, and this book helped me understand more what that type of situation is like and why it is so hard sometimes for people to leave those situations. Next up, I have The Future of Us by Jay Asher. This is about two best friends named Josh and Emma. In this book, it is 1996 and Josh receives an AOL CD in his mailbox. When he turns it on and he logs on to the internet, all of a sudden Facebook pops up. And Facebook hasn't been invented yet. And Josh is looking at himself on Facebook years later. They can see themselves 15 years in the future. So he calls Emma over and he shows her, and they basically realize that they can see the future and they know what their lives are going to be like. And they're not entirely happy about who they're turning out to be. So they do things in the present that will then affect their future, and they become addicted to Facebook and checking up on themselves. So they'll do something different one day and then log in and see how it's changed their Facebook, and they'll look at their statuses and they look at their pictures, and they're not even friends anymore on Facebook. And so they have to figure out, where did their friendship go wrong and how do they prevent the future? It was not the best written story I've ever read, not as great as 13 Reasons Why. However, I did enjoy it. It was a very different concept, and it was a cute YA novel, and I believe I gave this one 3 stars. So I read it a while ago, but I do remember enjoying it. Next I have Tales from the Bed by Jennifer and Valerie Estes. Now this is a memoir. This story is about Jennifer Estes, who was in her 30s living in New York when she was diagnosed with ALS. And her doctor basically told her, you have a year, max out your credit cards, go on vacation, and she makes a decision right then and there that she is going to grab life by the horns and live. This is her moment. And she has 2 sisters, and she has promised her sisters, one of them is Valerie, who ended up finishing writing this story once her sister passed away. She promised her sisters that nothing would ever tear them apart. So she focuses on her family, and she focuses on enjoying herself and doing whatever she wants and not letting herself be afraid and it's a beautiful story. Finally, the last book is Truth and Beauty by Ann Patchett. This is another memoir about Ann Patchett's friendship with a woman named Lucy Greeley, and they met in 1981, and they went to college together, and they became great friends. Lucy, she had her jaw removed from cancer, I believe, when she was a child. This was actually a required reading for one of my college courses, and it's not a very long book. I believe I read it in one sitting actually because I really enjoyed it. And Anne is writing about their friendship and how it evolved and how they tended to drift apart and how they had to deal with lots of things such as drugs and how it affected their friendship. Lucy Greeley has since passed away, and this book is written after that. So it's really Anne remembering her friend and talking about how she feels now and reflecting back on their friendship. So those were 10 books that I feel don't get talked about or shared very often, and I wanted to bring them to light in case you may be interested in any of them. So if you think you would like to read one or want to know more, please comment down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching!